Hello, everyone. Welcome to the FTX podcast. I'm really happy to have here with me today a lot of the leadership team of StoryBook Brawl, an amazing game. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Thanks.
Yeah, good to have all of you. Would you mind introducing yourself briefly and giving a little bit of background? Perhaps Matt Nass, if you'd like to start.
Yeah, I'm Matt Nass, and I originally was a professional Magic the Gathering player, as is the same for a lot of our background, and then moved into game design and worked on other games for a while, and then kind of a few of us decided to go out on our own and make StoryBook Brawl. It was exciting to do something different and, have the entrepreneurial vibe, get to, be more in the mix and make the final call on a lot of things. And yeah, I've loved it so far. It's been a couple of years. And it's been fantastic.
Yeah, and I'm Matt Place. Also, my background starts in gaming with professional Magic. This is when Matt Nass was still probably a baby, actually. I'm not even joking. Pretty crazy. Back in the original days, 94, 95. And I've worked on a lot of games, Magic for 7 years, got to work on Hearthstone, a lot of other games, Eternal, the predecessor to Runeterra. So love making games. And now I get to be a part of StoryBook Brawl.
Yeah, and I'm LSV, Luis Scott Vargas. I actually wasn't one of the founders. The other founder is Josh Utter-Layton, who, if you're a fan of Magic the Gathering, he's a Hall of Famer, as am I. And I got brought on right after the StoryBook Brawl went into early access. What actually happened is I played the game for 2 days and then went barking up Matt Place's tree. And I'm like, I got to be involved. This game is too fun. Like that's really what it was. It was the team as well. You guys are great. I've worked with both of you. I worked with Matt Place and Matt Nass, both, and Josh, actually, all at Direwolf, where kind of I got my start in game design. But really, the game itself was such a compelling reason for me to hop on board. And so I'm doing marketing, design, and content, and really love that I'm getting to be a part of this.
Oh, that's awesome. And before we dive into the game and what it is and how to play and whatnot, I'd love to hear a little bit more about what Magic is and means for you guys, because it seems to be this common thread that has brought you all together. And I think it's actually something very pertinent to the world that we're starting to explore with StoryBook Brawl, because I think it's kind of like one of the best precursors to NFTs we've seen in the IRL world before this all happened. And, maybe Matt Place, if you'd like to give sort of your thoughts on Magic and what makes it so special.
Yeah, so Magic, for people who haven't played, is literally the most complex game on the planet. As I believe the FTX guys from MIT actually wrote the article on that. But yeah, it's super fun. It's been around for almost 30 years now. Tons of awesome art, right? The tons of worlds explored. They do world building every year and sometimes multiple times per year. So tons of fantasy exploration. And they really, a big piece, a really notable part of the history of Magic is starting up what was the predecessor to esports. So back in 94, 95, they started giving away millions of dollars to pro players, which just blew my mind as an 18-year-old playing a game, seeing the $1 million payouts. I was like, do they mean that? They can't possibly be right. It just blew my mind. But and then you saw other companies with, start to build up their esports afterwards. But yeah, Magic's a big deal to all of us. And a lot of what we were shooting for in StoryBook Brawl is one of the ways you play Magic is called draft, which is similar to a fantasy draft in football or other sports. And that's a lot of what we were shooting for in StoryBook Brawl, is that fun feeling of like on the fly, how am I going to make my cards work together? What's my team going to be? Which is, for a lot of us, our favorite way to play Magic.
Yeah, I would say that Magic is probably the single biggest influence in my life when it comes to my professional career, and has huge impact personally as well. I started playing when I was like 11, or around the time Matt Place was actually playing in these tournaments. I was just opening my first packs, and I ended up being a professional Magic player for well over a decade. I guess technically I kind of still am. I still play in the tournaments, but I founded Channel Fireball, a website that sells Magic cards, and that's been a huge part of my life. And I honestly believe Magic is maybe the greatest game ever made. It's just such a good game. And all we want to do is to build games that can kind of aspire to be as in capturing and really fun for like the long term. That's a really big part of what we build towards. Magic, I mean, it's gotten all the people on this call I know because of Magic. So it's not to be understated how important it was for all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. And you touched on it a little bit. One of the cool things about Magic is there's so many different ways to experience it, right? So So it's an A+ game, and you can just play and have a great time. You can compete at the highest level in tournaments, which is a different experience. You can play multiplayer, where you're playing with friends and have 4 people playing at a time, and that's a different experience. And you can also collect, which is what you were touching on, Tristan, right? Luis has bought cards that he has no intention of playing with in tournaments, just because he thinks they're awesome and they look cool. They have a history behind them. They're old. And so that's another way to experience Magic. And it's kind of impressive that the game has lasted for so long and has attracted so many different people who experience the game in so many different ways.
To be fair, Matt, I pretend like I'm going to use the cards, but it's really because I want to look at them. I have actually become a collector at this point.
Yeah, that seems to be a huge part of the whole Magic community, is this collection aspect where people want to keep these cards and have the physicals and have their folders and everything. And I guess for you guys, before we go into the StoryBook Brawl game itself, I'd be curious, when you started seeing NFTs for the first time and hearing about them a little bit here and there, did you guys make associations with this collectible world, or what were your thoughts initially? And perhaps how have those thoughts evolved now?
I can speak for myself, where I didn't really start from the collecting angle. I started just playing. I was a kid playing the game and just kind of enjoying it. But pretty soon, Magic had, for example, a cycle in one of the first sets of elementals. There was a fire elemental, a water elemental, an air elemental, earth elemental. I had 2 of them, and I wanted to get the other 2, not for any other reason that I want to get all 4 of these. I mean, there's a reason Pokemon is literally the biggest brand in the entire world, and that's because collecting them all is just such a driving force. Even when you don't really have a reason past collecting them all, it doesn't have to have anything else going on. So I've become much more of a collector now, and I think I'm more of a collector than these other guys, but they've definitely interacted with it in various ways.
Yeah, it's interesting working on Magic. So I was there 2003 to 2010, how much you're trying to make the best, most fun game you can possibly make with each new set, but also thinking about what does collecting mean to people, right? A lot of the players, actually me, the first year, a lot of it was collecting over playing before the Pro Tour started. How do you build the cards? How do you build the sets so that they're attractive to that kind of collector instinct in us, right? How do you make it fun for both types of players? And Wizards has gotten way better at this, right? They make tons of products that are aimed at the collector and provide good value, right? People want these sets. There's a lot of cool, they're teaming up with other brands. I don't know if you guys have seen the Street Fighter announcement. I know Luis and I used to play a lot of Street Fighter. But yeah, it's cool. It's such a good experience too, I think, for our team playing and working on Magic and really understanding that, okay, what is the range of the audience in terms of how they want to collect, what's appealing to them, what does it mean to collect, what does it mean to have a game that's super fun that you also care about collecting the pieces, and how that synergizes is a big deal.
Yeah, I actually went and grabbed, I have a 93-94 deck of all cards from 93-94. It's a format some people play, and it's just got all my really old sweet cards, Jam Day Tome, Ancestral Recall, Black Lotus, all that kind of stuff that I built this deck. I played it maybe 2 games. Mostly it's just I wanted to have the deck because I wanted to have the deck.
Yeah. While Matt Nass answers, do you want to show us that Black Lotus on camera for the feels?
Yeah, for sure. It's
that is
an Alpha Lotus I picked up about 15 years ago, and for $900 or something like that.
Wow.
It's a little bit more now, but I've cast it many times. It's a card it's well loved.
Let's go.
Yeah. Do you feel guilty playing with it, or is that what it's meant to do?
As much of a collector as I am, I also have the view that I get these cards to play with. So the fact that I'm costing myself or risking these cards by shuffling them is just, I got them to play with. I'm going to play with them.
I love it.
Fair enough. Yeah, no, I think Matt and Luis touched on it really well. Yeah, it is the original collectible card game, in our opinion, the best collectible card game, I think, and it's really special. Yeah.
Sweet. Yeah, thanks for this appetizer, I guess, to the main course, which is StoryBook Brawl, this amazing game that you guys have built that, many people on the team are enormous fans of. There's seldom a time you walk past Sam's screens and StoryBook Brawl isn't up on one of them. So I think that in itself is really, really cool. What is StoryBook Brawl? How would you guys describe it? And I guess what was the impetus to build that type of game?
Yeah, so the type of game, the way I like to describe it is to go back to that fantasy football type of space, right? Where you're picking what characters you want from story and myth, and then you're arranging them on your board, but then battle itself is an auto battler, right? Richard Garfield, who made Magic the Gathering, he calls it a chaos engine, which I think is a great description, right? You're trying to make the odds best in your favor, but then you kind of watch the dice get rolled and see how it plays out. Tons of skill, but randomness as well. Yeah, it's tons of fun. Yeah. And then, yeah, do you guys want to add to that?
Well, I can't speak to exactly your guys' impetus for making the game, but I know from working together for the longest time, Matt had always been, what if there was no one telling us what we could or couldn't do? What if we made our own game? And you know what? You guys actually went and did it. The Mad Men, like it's actually crazy how, and I'm really still to this day impressed by how well you guys did, you and Josh, with such a small team and so few resources.
Yeah, shout out to Josh and John, right? We literally only had 4 people for months. And somehow in less than 2 years, we got to early access on Steam. And yeah, they're fantastic. Yeah, we've been playing some auto battlers maybe 2-3 years ago when they first came onto the scene. And I know Matt Nass, you got into the top 200 in one of them, in Underlords. The one that really got me was the Hearthstone version, Hearthstone Battlegrounds, which is a card game auto battler, which I love because I can read the cards and really understand what each game piece does, which is important to me. So I loved it. My buddy Mike Donay, who I've known for forever, he's also a pro Magic player, believe it or not. He made that version of Hearthstone, and it's crazy popular now, huge. People love it. I got addicted to it on a 14-hour flight, downloaded it on my iPad right before I got on the plane, and just couldn't sleep, was just playing the game the whole time. And so we kind of saw this opportunity. Josh, Matt, and I all got together out here at my house in Washington. And we said, hey, we could do this. We could make a game like this. And Mike had these huge restrictions on himself where he was taking cards from Hearthstone and putting them into his auto battler. But what if we built the game from the ground up? And not only do we design each card to be specifically for StoryBook Brawl, but also the game engine got changed dramatically. John had the idea of treasure discovery, which anybody who's played the game knows this mechanic, and it's super fun. You add treasures to your board, which totally changes kind of the composition and the value of all your other characters. And Josh had an incredible idea, which is kind of this front row, back row, so that your tactics, your strategic tactics matter a lot more than they do in some other auto battlers, which is a huge improvement, I think, for our game.
Yeah, I got, as Matt mentioned, I got completely addicted to Dota Underlords, played over 500 hours of it, just going crazy, made it to top 200 in the ranked ladder and just playing nonstop. And I think what made it so special is in strategy gaming, there's not often new genres created, right? Like, there's been, and I mean, in general in games, new genres aren't that common, but even then, like Fortnite or something like that, I tried it, but it's not, for me, strategy games is where it's at. And they've kind of been, the same for a long time. And so seeing this new genre is just so exciting, right? It's a completely new, unexplored space. And so, there's now been a couple auto battlers released, but it's still brand new. It's years old as opposed to decades old. And so because of that, there's a lot more room for innovation, a lot more unexplored space. And so, yeah, it felt so natural to get into it. And another nice thing about it that Matt alluded to is it's not actually that intensive. It looks good on a phone. It's relatively simple to pick up, and it's a little easier to make because at the time we were on an indie budget where we were building this from the ground up, and we're excited to be able to explore more and do more now. But that was our situation as well. So for a lot of reasons, an auto battler just felt super natural to go for, and I'm really excited we did.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I mean, you guys had all been looking at these games, playing them, and also working at a game studio before. How do you approach building something like this from scratch? I mean, it seems almost insurmountable before you get anything started. So I'd be curious, like, because you have to create the lore, you have to create the game engine, you have to create the strategic mechanisms between all the cards. Like, it's like so many intersecting pieces. How do you approach this?
Yeah, great question. We didn't know what we were biting off when we said, yeah, let's do this. So when it was just me, Matt, and Josh is an engineer, right? He can, essentially, he could make prototypes for us where we could test it out. But a huge piece of this was we knew we needed to get somebody to help us work on the client, right, and do the other heavy load of the engineering space. And so John Cumbert, when he joined the team, has just I mean, honestly, he's a superstar, right? Able to take a game from scratch to early access in about 18 months is totally crazy. So you could argue, looking back, we were biting off a lot more than we knew at the time, right? With our tiny budget, but somehow it worked out. But yeah, it's funny looking back too, when you talk about the lore, right? Just when we kind of made those big decisions, right? Like, hey, is our lore this or this? And we were like, hey, one day we were like, hey, maybe like the storybook theme is good. And you remember this call, Matt? We're like, yeah, let's just go out on that. And in hindsight, we're like, oh, thank goodness we did that. We love it, right? We feel like it's turned out really well. We also got very lucky and, having artists, Felipe and Kate here, who did these pieces you can kind of see behind me. They're phenomenal artists, right? World class, in my opinion. And the fact that they were willing to work with us because, we knew some of them or we had acquaintances with them being in the game industry, I think also really helped us.
Yeah, back in February 2020, me and Josh flew out to Matt's place in the Seattle area and spent a week just staying there because normally we work remotely. So this is kind of right before COVID hit really hard. And we just kind of brainstormed and made an initial rules for a game and also designed kind of the first batch of cards in a week. We grinded really hard, working long hours and came up with a ton of great stuff. Then somehow, as Matt alluded to, Josh makes this prototype that's completely functional in almost no time flat. And even though I'm not really a programmer, I also chipped in a little bit, coded some cards, even though I only half know what I'm doing. Then we had this client, but it wasn't networked. You couldn't play with other players. So what we actually did is I would play a bunch on my own and make enemy boards. So when you would play against the past, because this game doesn't really have as much interactivity. It has some, but in general, you're kind of playing on your own and building your board on your own for the most part. So playing against someone who drafted their army a week ago actually works pretty well. And so I would draft 7 armies, and those would be the 7 opponents for our prototype build. And you would play against Matt Nass bot, basically 7 Matt Nass bots.
So if you're wondering why a single player is so easy to beat, it's because it's just all Matt Nass bots.
No, now we have a proper AI, which is not as difficult as Matt Nass bot.
But that was such a good sign for us, right? Like the fact that it was fun. We were playing against, essentially dummies, right? Made us very optimistic that we had something on our hands that would eventually be even more fun.
Yeah, it looked very prototypey. It had no visual effects or animations, or at least it had a little bit, but nothing to the degree we even have now. And obviously, we're going to take a big step up even from there. And yeah, that was the first time I think we all got very excited, because when you're having fun with something that's so prototypey, so janky, that we haven't spent that much time iterating on the design of as well, how fun is it going to be when we get all those things even to the B level? Then how fun is it going to be when they get to the A level? And now maybe they're going to get to the A+ level. So
right.
Yeah, that was a really cool experience.
Yeah, super exciting. I mean, funny story, Matt Nass and I actually met in like June of last year in Denver. He was telling me about this game that he's building and all these different things. And I was telling him about NFTs because I was working deeper in the NFT space at that time. And I was like, oh, NFTs sound like a good fit for what you're building. And he said, yeah, who knows? We'll look at it later. Let's see what happens. Like, we have way too much work to do right now to think about that. And I'd be curious, I guess, to hear how this story happened with Sam, or how you guys came into the family and how sort of we got to where we are now, I guess.
Yeah, so I've known Sam since middle school, playing Magic, actually. We went to the Junior Super Series, which used to be a thing. You could play tournaments with under 18. We'd go to weekly Friday night Magic with him and his little brother, and I consider them family. I'm actually staying at Sam's old house right now, so that gives you a sense of how close we are. And Sam had offered to, invest if we ever needed or anything like that, very supportive, but we were kind of trying to go on this indie style on our own. And then at some point, Sam says, hey, are you free to talk? And it's 11 at night. And I usually go to bed around then, but for Sam, obviously, got to pick up the call. So, and then he reaches out, says he's completely hooked on StoryBook Brawl, really wants to take it to this new place. Then Matt and I hop on a call later on, and then a week later, somehow we're in the Bahamas. and meeting and trying to get everything.
Yeah, a week later we're in the Bahamas with a handshake deal. It was like pretty quick. Yeah.
Yeah, Matt, you can take it from there. But yeah, it was pretty crazy.
No, that was a great description. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things I think is most exciting about all of this is that due to, even though this will potentially give resources to just keep upgrading the game, due to like previous relationships and how everything is, I think you guys will still have like that absolute autonomy over your own game, which as a founder, I'm sure there's a lot of beauty in that. And off of that question, I'd like to ask, like, were there sort of core tenets you set out with when you were building the game, or like things that were the pillars upon which everything else was built?
Yeah, so a lot of what we talked about in those early days, of course, we're aiming at fun, right? We want to kind of advance this brand new genre, right? That's only a few years old, but also that free to play model, right? We wanted to make something that people genuinely could love for, and even if they didn't want to put money into it, could totally enjoy for years. Right. One of the terms we've been talking about with Steve over at FTX too is the 100-year game. Right. How do we make a game like Magic that 30 years in, people are still going to be, chomping at the bit to play their next game, to do their next draft? We want to make a game like that where we're evolving it over time. Right. We're adding new cards. We're doing balance changes. Hopefully surprising people with brand new mechanics and whatnot. So that's a big core tenet for us is we want it to not just be fun for a while, but we want to make a game that doesn't end in terms of the puzzle solving fun, right? We want people to feel like they can continuously get better. There's new interesting things to do all the time. And I think that's proven to be true, right? We get tons of people who are, doing reviews on Steam, and luckily we've got quite good reviews there, which makes me happy. But, they'll post a review and it'll say like 730 hours. And it's like, wait, is that even possible? Have we been out for that long? Yeah. So it's awesome to see people already in that space.
Awesome. Anything else from your side, Matt Nass?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that hit the nail on the head. It really is, we're in this for the long haul. We're not trying to make something short term. And so having that fun, and we know part of that means, updating regularly, keeping things fresh, new cards, new heroes, changes, and just, keeping things as fresh as possible, being as different as possible. And just maximizing fun, right? That's the end goal.
And I guess, Luis, for you, I'd be curious, you came in a little bit after, but you decided to come in, which I'm sure is a very positive sign with everything that you've seen in the space. Like, what was the impetus there? What drew you so strongly?
I mean, I've played a ton of games in my life, right? Like Magic, certainly the most, but I've played and worked on tons and tons of games. And it didn't take very long before I realized StoryBook Brawl just kind of had it. It had the spark. And a big part of that is, if you like playing Magic, Booster Draft is my favorite way to engage with Magic, right? Where you open packs, select cards, make your deck. StoryBook Brawl is the drafting part without the playing part. It's actually like the fun part. And even though the playing part is definitely fun, a lot of times, how many times have Magic players been like, I wish I could just do the draft and then do another draft and just let the computer tell me who wins. And StoryBook Brawl had that. And the amount of depth that it had was just incredible to me, because auto battlers in general, I'm a fan of. I logged many hours in Hearthstone Battlegrounds, and StoryBook Brawl scratched this itch I didn't even know I had with Battlegrounds, where the addition of spells, the addition of treasures, the addition of better placement, like a lot more placement opportunities with the second and first rows, that really gave it that additional depth I had been looking for. My experience with Battlegrounds was I will play it pretty hard for a couple months, and then I'll stop for a couple months. And then I'll play it hard for a couple months and stop. With Brawl, that really hasn't been the case. Of course, now that I work on it, I have to play, obliged to. If I don't, Matt Place messages me. He's like, you haven't logged your hours yet. But it has that depth, which I think makes it sticky enough that you'll just be kind of captured by it. And that's something you always look for when playing or working on games is stickiness is a huge factor.
Yeah.
And it just has that.
Yeah, a great angle on that is, just how deep the strategy is and the stickiness, I think, because the puzzles are hard to solve, is players like you guys, right? World-class Magic players from the last few years, just you guys can have a discussion about what the right play is in StoryBook Brawl, not agree, change your minds, right? Even though you've already got your 1,000+ hours or whatever it is logged, it's still so hard to figure out what the optimal play is. And I think that's a really good sign, right? That shows why the game is so replayable.
You know what's an awesome sign is when the devs are no longer the best players at the game. If 6 months after your game is out, the devs are the best players. It actually just means not enough people are playing your game, or your game isn't hard enough. And I know from doing coverage or watching streams of our like best tournament players, we are no longer the best players in the game. When they go through what they do, they see all these angles. They make the play that's like 1%, 2% better, but enough times, you know, you do that it leads to a huge edge.
Totally. Yeah, actually, I'd love to hear a little bit more about the heroes and the spells and the quests, and perhaps a little bit more of the game mechanism itself. Would one of you maybe want to share a stream of live gameplay while we talk about it?
Yeah, I can boot that up right now.
Oh, cool.
I wasn't already playing, to be clear. I only do that in some of my meetings, but
Yeah, sounds like Sam.
Not like Sam. That's funny. The different card types you talked about. One is the hero, which we'll see Luis loading up here first. The selecting of the hero is so interesting because we have over 40 different heroes, and each one changes the value in its own unique way of all the other characters, which is a lot of what we're talking about, right? Keeping things fresh. So when you take a hero as simple as we have Mrs. Claus in the game, she makes all good characters better. So now your decision-making during the game is so much different. Sphinx is one that is going to give you free spells, which kind of changes your view on what does it mean to level up. So every time you level up, you get free spells. Well, what if you could make that free spell something that costs a ton, right? And get a ton of value out of it. So maybe you roll more. Roll is when you get a new set of characters for sale and a new spell. For people who haven't played, a lot of this will be quite complex, but for anybody who's, you know, kind of played these types of games, you'll know what I'm talking about. And so the spells are something cool too. A lot of the games don't have this this angle on the auto battle. They're mostly just the characters that are going to be doing the brawl. So Luis here cast a spell that lets you gives you a random roll the dice, so you get a random character from the shop, but it's going to get +1/+1. So the decision making there is quite interesting, because sometimes you're like, well, actually, this character that I know I need, I have to buy it over the spell. But if you're like, oh, they're all kind of close in value, maybe I should just get, you know, a random one and see how it goes. I think he did get the worst one, unfortunately.
As is usual for me.
Yeah, but but even then, I think it's actually one of the biggest benefits of StoryBook Brawl, which is the variety, right? I think one of the big risks with auto battlers is that sometimes early turns can feel very scripted, where it's like turn one I do this, turn two I do this, turn
Right.
three, and the spells help create that variety. Where maybe normally Luis would never have picked Tiny, the character he got from Roll the Dice, but now he has to play with it. How does that change your experience?
Right.
And so,
Yeah.
randomness and variety is just magic in games.
Yeah, because you mentioned, you know, scripted. Scripted means that you're removing skill too, right? If it's too obvious what the right play is, well, then it's not a very fun game, right? But yeah, like you said, it changes kind of the way he's going to play this game, because now that he has one Tiny, one of the major mechanics to get the treasures is to find 3 of a kind. So he has more incentive to find generally one of the worst characters, Tiny, if he ever finds another one, because he already has one. Now he has a pair. So hopefully we'll get to the 3 of a kind with the archer here, Sherwood Sure-Shot. When you get 3 of a kind in the game, you get a treasure. And one of the ways to think about treasures is they're kind of like the Sphinx, which says whenever you level up, your spells are free that turn. Treasures let you have kind of new hero powers in a way. The treasures have their own power that also change the value of all the characters that are in the shop and how they're going to interact with your opponent's characters. So when you kind of stacking those, you know, combos on top of each other, the combinatorics gets you into positions where you may have never had this hero with these specific 2 treasures. So it's totally new decisions you're making, which once again, like we've been talking about, we think adds a lot to the fun.
Well, it's funny. One of the things you mentioned earlier, Matt, was like, I got Tiny, one of the worst worst characters on that board. And Tiny's actually, you know, maybe not one of the worst actually level 2 characters in general, but because of the treasures, the spells, and the heroes, and even what all the other characters do, I've purchased and used every character in the game intentionally for a variety of reasons. There's no character that's just a complete whammy. And that maybe some you don't use very often, right? Like Darkwood Creeper says it's an 0/3, one of your characters survives damage, give that character +1 attack permanently. You have to have the right build. I'm not going to buy it here. It doesn't do anything. I don't have very high health, but sometimes it's the best character you can find.
Right.
And that sort of difference between when it's good and when it's bad is what keeps you coming back to the game over and over again.
Yeah, that's super cool. I love how many different dependencies there are between the cards, like how that can just alter what the gameplay looks like. Yeah, and I just love this because I was always a card collector as well. I never got that good at playing, but I collected cards. So I love the look of these things because essentially just like the lore, the story. I'd love to own these as like physical cards just to have them and look through them. And it's cool to play a game where you look at the art and it's beautiful. One thing I want to ask you guys before I ask for your thoughts on, say, NFTs, for example, is like, you said this already looks super sharp to me. Like, what is sharper, so to say? Like you were talking about, like, you can bring it to an A and then an A+ game. Like, what are things that change if that happens?
So we've got we're very excited. So we have a lot of friends that are artists in the game industry, and so we have Jeremy Cranford, who is he was the art director on Hearthstone over at Blizzard. And so he not only joined our team, but he's recruiting a full art studio team on Good Luck Games. So they're going to take this to that AAA competitive with companies like Blizzard and Riot. And we've got a couple articles up on our website, StoryBook Brawl. And you can already see what they're exploring and how much better it's going to get. And I know a lot of our players love what we currently have, and I do too in a lot of ways, right? And we're going to miss some of these nostalgic pieces, but it truly is going to advance into that AAA space, which I could not be more excited about. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So
Luis, you can stop sharing if you want. So we can see our faces again for the recording. Thank you for showing that. That's awesome.
Yeah. And so, there's a lot of different potential specifics. There's, making there's kind of this mix between 2D and 3D on the playmat. And so getting that exactly right is really tough. Adding more animations, there's like a frog in the corner of the playmat right now, right? What if you click on that and then the frog does a little jump? Things like that. Yeah. There's right now our card frames look pretty similar between types. So characters and spells, treasures all have heroes kind of have similar looking frames, adding some more uniqueness there where I can really feel the distinction between each card type. There's a bunch of different things. And so, we're in a solid space. I feel pretty happy with where we're at for an early access indie game, but there's a lot of ways to level up. And when we have our list of things to do for to get to that AAA space, it's a long list. It's a little bit daunting at times, but I think we can do it. So.
Oh yeah.
Nice. And yeah, guys, so I know this is still super early and you guys are beginning to explore the space and you want to do this in the most kosher way possible, and you want to make sure that it's done in a way that is good for the players, good for the artists, good for the company. I know you guys want it to be additive instead of extractive. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about sort of how you guys are thinking about NFTs, even though I know none of this has been defined yet. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, we're still exploring it. And that's one of the things that, we are very excited about on the team is the path that we're set upon with, talking with Sam at FTX and amongst ourselves is we want to explore and find ways that we can bring more value to players while, exploring essentially NFT ownership, right? And so what does that mean? And like we said, we're still exploring that, but it's so important for us to be very ethical. We know that the world right now of gaming is like, what are NFTs? Very worried about what it means. And so, but we know what we want to do, right? We, coming from Magic the Gathering and other games like that, we want to provide upside with feeling like you have a collection, right? Oh, I want to own this version of this art. And now I do, and it's so cool. And I want to show my friend, right? We want those positive gamer and collector versions of NFTs that people can really look at us and go, oh yeah, they're doing it right. They're providing value. They are ethical, right? They're the shining knights. And one of the terms we've used internally is, we want to lead by example, right? We want to bring to the gaming world the positive and upside version of NFT, right? NFTs are a tool, right? Ownership in a game like Magic the Gathering, who knows, someday we might make our own collectible card game where you can own every card in the game, there's tons of value there. Like Luis is talking about, he's turned into a collector from just a player. We want to reward those types of gamers and make them feel like we are doing it right and they are getting value.
I know a big part of all of this from the beginning has also been that we aren't partnering with any crypto exchange or company. We're partnering with FTX and we're partnering with their team and their leadership specifically. I personally already have kind of done that. FTX sponsors Limited Resources, a Magic podcast that I do every week, and that was a big decision for me and my co-host Marshall. And part of the reason we chose it is we do believe in Sam and FTX's vision for how this should be done, not necessarily how everyone in this space is doing it or how a lot of people in the space are doing it, but the ideal of how should we approach integrating blockchain with games? How should we approach just crypto in general? And obviously the fact that Matt's known Sam forever definitely helps. I mean, but overall, FTX has, from our perspective, definitely put their money where their mouth is when it comes to doing the right thing. And we have, a lot of confidence that whatever direction we go with StoryBook Brawl is going to be better for the players. That is just number one in our book. We want to make a game that we want to play and be proud of and love. And this is not going to change that. In fact, we believe this is going to make the game even better.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, we're just going to keep exploring and trying different things, prototyping things. And if something is not fun, we're not going to do it, right? That's the end of the day. So for in-game implementations, if it makes the game worse, we're not going to do it. For out-of-game implementations, if it seems predatory, makes the game less fun, whatever it is, we're not going to do it. And so that's kind of as we explore stuff, that's the fundamental tenet. But we're going to try a variety of different things, I think, before. This is a hard problem to solve, right? It's hard to figure out what the right thing to do here is. And so it's going to involve a lot of trial and error. And that's the task that we've kind of signed up for, whether it's saving final boards and keeping track of those and having achievements for those, saving in-game achievements, cosmetics, whatever it is, we're going to try to keep exploring things and figure out what's right.
Yeah, we have a lot of fun ideas there that we're excited to prototype. So Tristan, you may remember this. 12 years ago, right, Riot and some other game companies in the kind of Western world started doing free to play, right? And there was a lot of negative backlash, right? Because sometimes for very good reason, right? There's some of those games where what you would call predatory. But eventually Riot, I think, was the shining knight there, right? They showed, hey, we were making a fun game. You could spend no money. It truly is free to play over years and years and years and have a ton of fun, right? One of the best games ever made. We want to be that for blockchain, right? We want to be one of the companies that's actually showing by example, doing it right and making gamers go, you know what, actually, this is great. They're providing value, right? And we think we're one of the perfect companies to do it, right? With our background in playing collectible card games, right? Collectibles is the perfect space to be exploring, we think, yeah.
Yeah, I really like your guys' ethos. And, I know you guys personally, and I know it's like actual representations of how you guys think. So I'm really, really, really excited to see how this all plays out and to be a part of it and work with you guys on these things as well and see kind of like how we can improve this for the gamers and for the participants. And even like if you would just want to be collectors too, which I think all of these pieces are exciting. I guess just my last question for you guys is like, how can people get involved? How can they check you guys out? How can they play StoryBook Brawl?
Well, the easiest way is just go to Steam and download StoryBook Brawl. That's like step one. We're at StoryBook Brawl on Twitter. We also have a Discord, which you can find searching on Discord, or it's linked on our Twitter or through in-game. We're really responsive in our Discord, where we've got all the devs in there. Channels you can ask questions, and we built up an awesome community. You can go in there and talk StoryBook Brawl at any time of day with tons of people who want. We also run tournaments every month. That's another cool part is we all have a background in tournaments and we value those. And we think that they're a really cool way to get engaged and stay engaged with games. So every month, all the players who hit 4,000 rating hit Mythic and they get to play in our tournament, which then qualifies you for our seasonal championships. We actually have one of those coming up next week with 32 players, all our high finishing tournament players and some awesome streamers. So tons of ways to be involved. And, if you tweet at StoryBook Brawl, there's a pretty good chance I'll answer, but if not me, one of the other folks on the account. So we really love the community that we've built so far, and we kind of look forward to seeing that community grow.
Yep. And then we're also building up the news site, news.storybookbrawl.com. And that has articles by players. It has articles by developers. We've started showing off some of the new things we're doing in art space. We showed off the first exploration of our card frame update, and then we're going to show off our playmat update there. So we're also trying to be more accessible as devs and really let our community see our process and see where we're going with all this. And so, we're going to keep talking about design process, art process, maybe we'll even have some engineering process articles, the new features we're building on. And so yeah, we're trying to be as accessible as possible. And Discord, we have a dev questions channel, and basically most questions get answered there as well. So yeah, we really want to be accessible and want to be as responsive to our community as we can.
Amazing, guys. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. This was great.
Yeah, thank you, Tristan.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.